The man stood before the wooden register with an ease that seemed entirely out of place in the hurried rhythm of the coffee shop. He was tall and broad-shouldered, carrying himself with a quiet, upright posture that suggested formal discipline. His dark hair was cropped short along the sides, showing streaks of silver near the temples, and combed back without a single stray lock falling out of line. Beneath the open collar of his charcoal trench coat, the fabric of a heavy navy sweater fit snugly against his throat, catching stray droplets of rain that continued to glisten across his shoulders. His face was defined by sharp, angular lines, a firm, square jaw, a straight nose, and deep-set hazel eyes that remained steady and unblinking. There was a weathered stillness about him, the kind belonging to someone accustomed to waiting in cold rooms without complaint. When the barista finished preparing an order and stepped up to the register, the man did not lean forward or check the overhead menu. He already knew precisely what he wanted. "Black coffee, large, to stay," he said. His voice was a clean, low baritone, unhurried and remarkably resonant, despite the ambient noise of grinding beans and murmuring patrons. He did not slur a single syllable, delivering the short sentence with the crisp, polite cadence of a man giving coordinates. As the cashier keyed in the order, Miles watched the stranger's hands from his seat at table 7. The man possessed large, capable hands with clean, trimmed fingernails. While waiting, his left hand rested flat against the polished oak counter, where his index finger tapped a slow, rhythmic pattern of 3 deliberate beats, followed by a 3-second pause, repeating the cycle twice. It was a subtle, unconscious habit, almost musical in its regularity. When it came time to pay, the stranger reached into his interior coat pocket and extracted a slim leather billfold. Without glancing down at the paper currency, his thumb and index finger separated 2 crisp bills and handed them across the counter with surgical precision. When the coins were returned to him as change, he did not dump them haphazardly into his pocket. He sorted them quietly into the palm of his hand, slid the quarters into his coat, and dropped the remaining nickels and pennies into the glass tip jar with a soft metallic clatter. He took his ceramic mug by the handle, lifted it with a steady, level forearm, and turned around to scan the room. His eyes swept across the tables, not with the casual hesitation of a customer looking for a seat, but with the calculated appraisal of someone securing a perimeter. Sitting in his corner, Miles felt an abrupt and exhilarating shift in his chest. For the past 2 hours, he had been suffocating under his own tedious obsession with physical measurements and mechanical inventories, writing as though human life were a blueprint to be audited. But watching this man move through the cafe, something primitive and long buried clicked into place. Miles was no longer a failed writer taking sterile notes on a legal pad. In that single electric moment, he felt like a private investigator sitting in the shadows of a stakeout, piecing together the silent movements of an operative who had slipped through a rainy afternoon. The fog of artistic self-doubt lifted entirely. His pulse quickened, and the graphite pencil in his hand felt light, dangerous, and alive. He flipped the yellow pad to a clean, fresh sheet, smoothed the paper with his palm, and began to write. The words did not crawl out as stiff descriptions of screws and springs. They surged forward with narrative velocity, sharp dialogue, and atmospheric weight. The mundane Brooklyn coffee shop dissolved in his mind, and the real world began to reshape itself into the opening scene of a stage play. On the yellow paper, the charcoal-coated stranger transformed under Miles's racing pencil into a woman named Valerie Vance, a sharp-witted private investigator arriving at a coastal tavern on a stormy autumn night. The heavy timber door of the Black Gull Tavern swings inward, admitting a gust of ocean wind and the low, unrelenting roar of the Atlantic surf. Rain lashes the small diamond-paned windows, streaking the dark glass in erratic rivers. The interior of the tavern is warm and dim, smelling of burning birch logs, wet wool, and stale pipe tobacco. A single brass ship's lantern hangs from the low ceiling beam, casting long amber shadows across the worn floorboards. Valerie Vance steps across the threshold, pausing on the woven straw mat to push the hood of her midnight blue trench coat off her dark silver-streaked hair. She is tall, poised, and utterly unaffected by the gale outside. Water drips from the hem of her coat, forming a small pool around the toes of her leather riding boots. She carries no umbrella, only a slim leather dispatch case tucked securely beneath her left arm. Her eyes, sharp and gray as slate, sweep the tavern in 3 deliberate beats. She takes inventory of the room without turning her head, the old fisherman asleep by the hearth, the bartender wiping a pewter tankard with a dry linen rag, and the empty corner booth shrouded in shadow beneath the stairs. Valerie walks toward the bar with smooth, measured strides. The floorboards do not creak beneath her weight. She reaches the high counter and rests her left hand flat against the dark mahogany. Her index finger taps 3 rhythmic beats against the wood, pauses for 3 seconds, and taps 3 beats again. The bartender, a burly man with rolled-up sleeves and graying stubble, sets down his cloth and looks up. He meets her gaze and immediately straightens his posture, recognizing the unspoken authority in her demeanor. "Black tea," Valerie says. Her voice is low, smooth, and laced with a cool, iron composure. "Bitter, in a clean cup, and leave the pot on the counter." "Right away, ma'am," the bartender replies, turning toward the iron kettle steaming atop the hearth stove. Valerie does not sit on the swivel stools lining the bar. She remains standing, shifting her weight slightly onto her back foot, her right hand resting casually inside the deep pocket of her coat. Her fingers lightly brush the cold steel of a small brass key resting against a folded scrap of paper. The bartender returns, placing a steaming ceramic mug and a chipped porcelain teapot before her on a round cork coaster. He hesitates, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping to a cautious murmur. "Nasty business out on the northern point this morning, Miss Vance," the bartender says, his eyes darting toward the street door. "The town constable was down by the old fish houses before sunrise. Word is they found the cellar hatch wide open." Valerie lifts the mug, feeling the steam against her face. She takes a slow, measured sip, her expression remaining entirely unreadable. "The constable is 3 days late," Valerie says calmly, setting the cup down without making a sound against the cork. "He can search the crawl space until the tide comes in. He won't find what he's looking for beneath the floor." "They say there was a note left behind," the bartender whispers, leaning across the counter. "Written in fresh blue ink, left right under the ledger on the harbor master's desk." Valerie's jaw tightens slightly, a faint shadow of a smile touching the corner of her lips. She reaches into her coat pocket, produces a single silver coin, and spins it across the mahogany counter. The coin glides across the polished wood, coming to rest precisely in front of the bartender's hand. "A note is only dangerous to those who know how to read it," Valerie says softly. "Tell me, Arthur, has the man with the olive scarf been here tonight?" The bartender pockets the coin with a quick, nervous motion. "Came in 20 minutes ago, drenched to the bone, ordered an ale, checked his pocket watch 4 times, and left through the kitchen alley. Said if a woman in a dark coat came asking, to tell her the package is across the river, locked behind the dry docks. Key is right where she left it." Valerie nods slowly. She pours another measure of dark tea from the pot into her cup. She does not show haste or anxiety. Every breath is calculated, every second accounted for in her mind. "Did he mention the Monday inspection?" she asks, her gray eyes locking onto the bartender with intense focus. "Only said they issued a formal warrant at dawn," the bartender replies, wiping the counter nervously. "Said you had until the midnight freight train clears the crossing to retrieve the trunk. After that, the federal marshals take jurisdiction over the harbor." Valerie lifts her cup, draining the bitter tea in 2 steady swallows. She sets the cup down, unbuttons the collar of her dark coat, and fastens the brass clasp of her dispatch case. "The marshals can have the harbor," Valerie says, her voice ringing clear against the sound of the rain beating on the roof. "By midnight, the trunk will be in Boston, and the ledger will be ashes." She turns from the counter with an unhurried, graceful pivot, her coat billowing slightly as she walks toward the back door near the kitchen. The bartender watches her in silence as she grips the iron latch, opens the door to the howling wind and darkness of the alley, and steps out into the storm without looking back. Miles pulled his pencil from the page, his breath catching in his throat as the final sentence settled into the yellow paper. The cafe was still around him. The ceiling fan continued its steady revolutions overhead, the aroma of roasting coffee drifted warmly through the air, and the rain pattered softly against the plate glass window. Across the room, the tall man in the trench coat sat quietly at table 4, his hands wrapped around a white ceramic mug, his gaze fixed thoughtfully on the street outside. Miles leaned back against his wooden chair, looking down at the 4 pages of dense, flowing dialogue he had just created. There was no shame in his chest, no tedious measurements cluttering the margins, and no urge to apologize for his own imagination. For the first time all afternoon, the story was alive, breathing, and moving forward into the night. He rested the pencil against the pad, smiled faintly, and watched the steam rise from his own coffee cup.